was our intention to try to make the most historically accurate Viking movie we possibly could.
The Vikings were all over. There were so many great stories because it was important that it had the kind of the laconic tone of the old Icelandic sagas.
There's a poetry to the language of this. It almost feels like Beowulf.
I will avenge you, father.
This mantra of, I will avenge you, father, I will save you, mother, I will kill you, Fjolnir. It's a very singular drive.
Revenge is at the core of this story.
Most of these Viking stories are revenge stories, and Amleth was the source material for Shakespeare's Hamlet.
Or, if you're younger, The Lion King.
The predecessor was a Scandinavian legend called Prince Amleth.
Uncle kills dad, steals mom, son goes on revenge.
I will kill you, Fiona!
Everybody knows this. As an audience member, part of you just wants him to get revenge, because that's the way these kinds of stories work. But you do ask questions, who's right and who's wrong?
When I read Rob's first draft of The Northman, I almost cried of joy.
Till that day comes, I will torment the man who made my life a hell.
It felt authentic to the culture, to the people of the time. It had a lot of soul and heart. It was exactly the tone that I was hoping.
What got me fascinated was the rich mythology and poetry. Before I really knew that I wanted to make a Viking movie and I just started to learn about Vikings in general, I just didn't understand how sophisticated the culture was.
It's a very mysterious culture, and I think that fascinates people.
I knew that there could be something beyond just jacked guys cutting each other up with swords.
They had a hierarchy, and they had also a belief and a religious belief.
There is supernatural thought in everyone's everyday life.
The Vikings believed that some people had almost like a spirit animal, and it lived within them. For women, it was often a sea creature, and for men, it could be a fox or a wolf or a bear. To people at the time, it felt like a kind of a normal thing.
You are still a beast, cloaked in man flesh.
That's why I like going into the past, is to try to get inside people's minds who think differently than me, and then realize I could see how that makes sense to them.
Even though your brother stole my eyes, I see you.
Vikings were very fatalistic.
So there's something in the Norse mythology where three female supernatural characters called the Norns of Fate. They weave this tapestry of each and every individual's life. You have free will, but the Norns already know your fate has been set. And I quite like that image of the huge tapestry of your life, and it's not till the last thread or the very end of it where your life will be completed and revealed.
You cannot escape what fate the Norns have spun.
I think we have an innate curiosity to discover what lies beyond the horizon.
They lived in this world that was very harsh, and life and death were always on the edge.
I don't think I've ever had a stronger connection with the director than I do with Rob.
It's been so wonderful to work with Robert again.
To find a filmmaker who understands the tone, who is familiar with the old Icelandic sagas, familiar with the culture and the history of the Vikings. He basically became a scholar.
I don't do anything that I am not insanely passionate about, because there's just not time in life for it, and it's so hard to make a film anyway.
If anything is even slightly anachronistic, Rob will be like, no.
Robert was in the fitting room with us and was going in detail of the folds, how the trousers was folding when he was moving around in the fitting room.
He will come up and be like, well, that thread they're using is from the 14th century, not the 11th, so we can't use that. So for the look of the movie, that's very reassuring to me. That's what you want when you make a period movie.
When I was a production designer, I always liked working with directors who knew what they wanted.
And he's extremely easy to talk to and articulate, and he'll tell you what he wants, and he'll tell you when, no, that's not what he wants.
That's very helpful. If you know what things are not, choices get eliminated and the path becomes clear.
The approach of trying to do something historically accurate, the great thing for me about it is that everybody knows what we're after. We know that we're after this thing.
But it's just much closer to home and the heart when your director has written the script itself. And that urgency, that is also present here.
And as an actor, you just want to help him realize them as you can in your role.
Look how the Queen's cup grows wet for more men than her king.
It was important to get the audience invested.
I mean, the authenticity of the project is something that's very key to the way that Rob works.
That's down to every detail. The sets, the wardrobe, the costumes, the jewelry, the weapons.
My North Star becomes the historical research. Me and all my collaborators and all the actors know that the goal is this impossible idea of accuracy, so it aligns everybody and makes us united.
It's as close as we can get, knowing what we know today.
One of the challenges is the lack of written information. It's still an oral tradition at the period that this movie is set at, early 10th century.
There's always question marks. I try to go with what academia's overall consensus tends to be about a certain thing.
Everything had to be basically approved by a scholar.
I've been working with museums and with people in the reenactment world, and it has been such a pleasure to be here in this atmosphere of creativity.
Lynn and Craig worked with our Vikings historians, just as much as Rob did.
I mean, it's a collaborative art form. Everything is completely intertwined.
The coolest thing about being a production designer is you kind of have to know everything about the world.
I tried to get the architecture right and tried to get the materials right, get the aging of those materials right.
Part of what's great about trying to do this historical accurate is that you don't have to make choices. I don't have to dream about, like, how does this chair express this person's inner state? It's like, no, that's one of the few chairs from such and such burial site, just make it.
I mean, the Viking Age is really difficult. Yeah, it was kind of like handed to me, like, this is what the Viking world is, so this is what you're doing.
Viking architecture, which has no windows, and almost every room has a fire in the middle of the floor.
What they had for buildings was great for them. They're very warm, living like hobbits, just a big fire in the middle, keep everyone warm, no outlet for heat. You want to shoot a movie like represent that accurately. It's not camera or lighting friendly.
At that time, the only light source would have been fire anyway. The choices were to use fire as much as possible.
You have a little window. The real thing would have been this big. We expanded it to this much, but still it's 3+ feet thick. So the light doesn't actually, there's no pathway for the light to get in anywhere. So that was, that was the challenge. So it was a lot of just practical stuff that was just dictated by the accuracy of depicting their way of life. It's nice having rules sometimes, we have firelight, we have overcast, and we have sun. That's it, that's what you get.
So that was a challenge, but we worked it out.
You have a lot of people who have passion invested in figuring this stuff out. And so that makes the other people around them more passionate.
It's complicated and it's hard, frustrating at times, but it's the kind of people you want to be in the trenches with and go through something like this with.
To the kingdom of Rapse!
Their design vocabulary is very different from how they carve wood to what they do when they do metal work. It also becomes very different when you see the tapestries.
I mean, there's only one helmet from our period that's been discovered. So you base the helmets around that based on helmets on either side of it.
The research and certainly the fabrications was really fun and difficult.
Normally we have small pieces like this.
And they are literally pieces. There's not one complete garment.
Most of what we know about Viking clothing comes from burials.
Each of the family members would be wearing garments that were embroidered with these various motifs, straight lines, wavy lines, circles, squares, all had different meanings. So the lines are very particular, and we see this in our research.
So reconstruction is a mix of the textile and from wood carving and from jewels, many small figurines. We have the cut and the length of the dress. There's never found a complete dress. We don't know how long it is. We don't know how long the tunic are, except from those iconories.
It's so easy to do a good job as an actor in this movie because the world is so real.
When you arrive and you see these sets that are made with such detail and such care, everything's there. You enter that world and you fold into that world.
Something that was a real joy for me was working with these scholars who I respect eminently, but also to see them take so much pleasure in what we were creating.
So I will say this is the first movie ever made where we can see how the Viking actually looks like. And I would like to import Robert to all museums in Scandinavia because we need him.
It's a proper Viking movie, It's got all those ingredients you expect to have from the Vikings.
I want the average audience member to have their mind blown.
But I hope they felt like they were transported back to the Viking Age.
It might ignite a curiosity about what is really and truly a Viking aesthetic.
My fate has brought me here.
The Northman is a story that everyone can relate to. It's a story about family dynamics. It's a story about love.
It's a really emotional moment. We've shot the movie that I've been dreaming of making for 30 years.
That experience really shows how committed we all are to it. We really did, give up our lives for this.
I will avenge you, Father.
It's a very powerful thing when people get together and dream together.
I will save you, Mother.
We're almost ready to let the long ship sail out into the sunset.
I will kill you if you...
In the history of movies, I often think 85% of the cinematography Oscars should have gone to the location coordinator.
The thing that made me want to make a Viking movie was the Icelandic landscapes, the awe of these landscapes that feel before time and without time because they're just so epic. We always knew that Iceland was going to be too expensive to shoot the majority of the film in. Our producer felt very confident that we could find what we needed in Northern Ireland.
I think we found some extraordinary locations that a lot of them look just like Iceland to me.
Here in Northern Ireland, it's absolutely gorgeous. There is a definite tonal shift from one place to another.
You're 15, 20 minutes out of town and you're into wherever you want to be. You're on the coast, you're in the forest, you've got the best of everything.
Torhead with the cliffs, Clandy, we have 3 or 4 different locations we got out of a farm, basically.
I just want to drink it all in with my eyes. I know we've been so lucky. It really makes it magical.
But then shooting there was mostly miserable.
All the elements, we got it all.
The howling wind and the rain.
It's raining almost every scene.
Mud up to our knees in those shoes where you can get absolutely no footing. So everybody's been skating around.
Robert can yell, "Look cold and miserable," and you're like, I am cold and miserable. No acting required.
We're basically just wearing like potato sacks if we're not naked in thongs.
If you turn the camera around at the crew, like we're all completely covered in Gore-Tex.
And the weather kept changing. Up there, it's like it rains one minute, then it's super sunny, then it's overcast. But maybe that's been in some way helpful because it's supposed to be cold and dark and gray and miserable. Hopefully that's been, an advantage in a way.
And I will say that it was the heroic deeds were just getting to the location.
Sometimes things are just a bit challenging.
Naomi Liston, the location manager, killed herself trying to find stuff that could look like Iceland.
Before I even approached any owners, let's just get it understood first. Can I physically service this location?
I had to build on the space, so it was a little bit extra engineering to get the sets in there.
Quite early on, I have to work with designers and with art directors as to the planning and the placement of these roads within a set.
Locations did an amazing job getting us in, getting us out safely.
There were 5 different landowners that I needed to deal with. You're making your first approach, and literally it is sitting down at a kitchen table with sometimes elderly landowners and trying to explain to them, we'd like to build a Viking village on your hill. How do you feel about that? Funer's farm, so the cliff tops
is burial mounds from our period.
Since medieval times, since Neolithical times, you've had people living in that area.
It was kind of spectacular in that way.
Quite accidentally, I think I probably picked the most historically accurate place to put this Viking village.
One of the benefits here in Northern Ireland was at Fjolnir's farm. These are all turf buildings, and I had seeded them, and I had just started to get them to grow.
Mother Nature took over. You had these wonderful, furry, peaty walls. The grass was starting to come out of them. These beautiful flowers starting to come out the roofs.
It had fully grown into the set that I had hoped we would have had from the very beginning. And so that was spectacular.
When you are telling a mythic tale like this, you want to have these mythic landscapes to set it in.
It's been an absolutely extraordinary experience, and we've had such an incredible crew.
So I think the whole crew knows that, like, we went through all this behind the scenes, but it did not affect what we made in front of the camera.
This morning we were just saying it'd be great to come back and have a couple of Guinness with the crew and actually celebrate. I've made some great friends here.
They have all been remarkably friendly and accommodating, and I think I've thoroughly enjoyed the process.
But that said, now that it's coming to an end, I wouldn't mind a little pint of Guinness.
There's nobody else who could play this role except for Alex.
When I was a kid, I wanted to make a Viking movie. Started talking to a friend who's a producer in LA, trying to put together a team and try to develop a great epic Viking movie, because I'd never seen one.
Amleth is an interesting character.
Is he?
He idolizes his father.
Hail, Lord King.
Advandil gets murdered in front of Amleth's eyes. He makes it off the island on his own in a small rowboat with the mantra of avenging the death of his father and saving his mother.
I will kill you, Fiona!
We cut to 20 years later, and it's a very different character. The youthful, playful, exuberant child is gone, and there's a darkness in his eyes, and nothing could come between him and Fjolnir in the moment when he will have the opportunity to avenge the death of his father.
I will become a hailstone of iron and steel. I will have my vengeance.
We wanted to make Amleth feel like a protagonist in these Icelandic family sagas, who are these kind of anti-heroes. They're often outlaws.
Alex is so incredible to watch because he's a truly fantastic leader, no matter how many times you make him wrestle the strongest man in the world. He's just still smiling and still has this energy about him. It's very inspiring to see.
But to have someone who was a complete team player was incredible. And his work ethic, not just in his performance, but obviously in his body, like that is not easy to do.
We've given it a lot of blood, sweat, and tears over the past 5 months, and I couldn't be more proud of what we've accomplished out here.
Your strength breaks men's bones. I have the cunning to break their minds.
Anya Taylor-Joy plays Olga of the Birch Forest.
I was already in because it was Robert. I just wanted to go on another adventure with him, and what an adventure it is. Olga was very interesting to me. Something that I really love about her is her connection to the spiritual world and to nature. She really feels a sense of safety in her belief in fate. And that's a lovely confidence, actually, to have as a character, because you know that whatever's going on for her, she knows that it's what is meant to be. And that gives her a sense of ease, even when things are very difficult. Your sheep's clothing does not disguise you, Northman. I think Amleth and Olga are drawn together by fate. I think she really believes that. It's almost as if she can see this tapestry being woven of the story that she has a part to play in. And when she meets Amleth, she goes, ah, you're the other part of the story. Could it not be that your Lords of Fate have spun another thread for you to follow?
Anya and I, we have a really strong connection. It's important for the audience to feel that connection before Amleth does. I think it helps that we, in real life, actually get along, and that we have a rapport and that there's something there, and hopefully that comes across.
A lot of actresses might have asked to use a double, but she was there with her shoes off in the mud, in the freezing cold, and being a leader.
She is so sweet and talented and just the best on a movie set. I want her to be in every movie I ever make after this.
I feel like Olga's given me a lot of healing and a lot of confidence in my body and what I can withstand. I really needed to be out in nature living this character's life.
Strike. But know that bearing a stolen ring makes no half-breed a king.
It's a Viking Hamlet. I'm already sold. I want to see a Viking Hamlet.
King Orvindil Warraven is played by Ethan Hawke, a handsome, proud Norse king of a petty kingdom called Hrafnsey.
My character, in a lot of ways, is a symbol of fatherhood and a symbol of something lost. We're not really exploring the life of King Orvindil, about what his experiences. We're seeing him as a son sees him. And so that's interesting of its own, of how what we expect from fathers.
To the kingdom of Hrafnsey!
People who have their ego fed constantly tend not to think about other people very much. I think my character thinks so well of himself that he can't imagine other people don't love him.
He couldn't see the most obvious thing coming because he just thinks he's so great.
And you could see that level of ego as narcissism, or you could see it as a projection of his own goodwill. I don't know what it is, but I find it extremely interesting.
Viking women legally had more rights than you might expect, but even still, it's a patriarchal system.
You know, it's an incredibly male-driven world. First, you might think that my character is noble simply because he's being killed and he's betrayed early in the film. But it doesn't necessarily mean he didn't deserve betrayal. But as you go deeper into the movie, you might discover that from the female point of view, the king might not have been such a great husband.
You have not seen your queen in a season.
Queen Gudrun is played by Nicole Kidman. She has some secrets that shall not be told.
Never enter my chambers without invitation.
There's a coldness from his mother towards him as a child. There's a love and an intimacy in it that he never had as a kid, and he doesn't quite understand why. She wasn't an abusive mother. She was loving, but they were just not that tight.
I wanted Nicole when I had finished the script, and the first time I was going to meet her, I was a little bit like, I'm gonna meet Nicole Kidman. We sat down at this Italian restaurant in Nashville, and then after 90 seconds, she was like, just so you know, I'm going to do the movie.
How easily we all become princesses again when the beasts take us for their wives.
She also gave me a lot of notes about her character that were incredibly good to make the character much more rich and nuanced.
Behave. Be a man in front of your inferiors.
The main attraction at the beginning of it was that it was very different to anything I've ever done before. Fjolnir is the half-brother of the king. He is really sick and tired of being number two, and he's going to do something about this. We're gonna chop his head off, and I'm gonna do it.
He has a little bit of a Viking Richard III about him, which Claes does really well. Him always feeling like, am I as good or better than my brother? I should be better, but am I actually better? But I'm gonna kill him.
20 years later, weird omen that the curse that my brother put on me just before I chopped off his head is gonna come back to haunt me, which it does. Revenge is primitive and barbaric and stupid and horrible and something you should never ever do. It's not an ideal that I would ever sort of see as my thing. But that said, I would probably not be able to answer to what I would do if someone hurt the people that I love.
Freya, do you hear me?
He's ready for vengeance at his son's funeral.
My hour of grief has passed.
All those insecurities kind of vanish.
What Shakespeare did with it, he took it and put it in and made it a very sort of psychological, philosophical, existentialistic thing. Robert has taken the story. It's more like a Greek tragedy now.
Keep both of you safe.
I will.
The psychological thing is not so much a play here. It's more sort of an action-based kind of thing. This is probably the most physical thing I have ever had to do. I've trained a lot for this. So it was a challenge on a lot of different levels that I have not been challenged so much before. I'm very happy about that.
By Freyr, we will avenge them.
Thor is the eldest son of Fjolnir. He has this very youthful and impulsive side to him.
Ah! Oh, I will find who did this.
He's just a big facade, and he feels a lot of pressure to be this perfect Viking.
Regain your calm.
Thor always shows up to the party with the most extravagant outfits and with a lot of jewelry and hats. Thor might be the only Viking in this movie who gets to have a little bit of like, you can't sit with us attitude.
Never look me in the eye, slave.
The mere presence of Amleth, that's a huge element of irritation for Thor.
I'm not impressed. His stench.
Like, just like physically, the appearance of Amleth, I think he's just like a walking reminder to Thor how he's not the perfect Viking and how he's not suitable for the task that's lies before him.
Lady. I play Heimir, the Fool. He has a character name with his job right in the title.
Look how the Queen's cup grows wet for more men than her king.
Well, he's the fool publicly in events. He's the one that provides the entertainment, satires things. But his satire has a bite. But also, he's a priest. He conducts a very important ritual in the story.
Drink the fish in need of knowledge. To learn what it is to live and die in honor.
It's the same guy. He's got like a double life.
And be yet wise enough to be the fool.
Wise enough to be the fool.
Yeah, I love Willem. Willem's one of the greatest actors who's ever lived. I would submit that as a fact.
I always feel like you can only play scenes. You can't try to connect the dots because then you stand outside the scenes and you become an interpreter. And I feel much more comfortable when I just experience things.
Willem becomes. In the moment, he just is. It was lucky for me that all of my collaborators, the actors, it was something that we all felt somehow was important to us personally. So everyone gets passionate, and it's incredibly satisfying for me to watch.
Be not afraid, Amleth. Do as I do. In general, we're often fascinated by what we don't understand. One of the beautiful things about this movie is a sense of mystery. You know, that's what poetry can achieve.
Hearken to me, you two-legged dogs.
His dad decides that it's time. He's getting older, and he feels that it's time for his son to go through a rite of passage to basically become a man.
Well, the father knows that he's probably not long for the world and feels an obligation to kind of rush his son's development. He must be awoken to what awaits him.
The expectation in the Viking Age to be a traditional masculine man was pretty intense. He's a sensitive child, and he seems gentle. In the initiation ceremony, when he has to now become a man, it hopefully seems quite intense because he's not ready to be a man.
He goes to the temple where he meets Heimir, but he's a priest.
The Norns that spin and weave and their well of fate.
Thular is a word that we don't really know what it is. It's in Old Norse texts. Our best guess is a Thular is a cross between a court jester and a keeper of important secrets.
Something I find incredibly beautiful about what this script does, which is imagine that the jester is also a spiritual counselor. There's great wisdom in that.
Sweet silver, silence, dog!
The fools are the only people who get to tell the king what's actually going on without getting their head cut off. So it's helpful to be a fool.
You know, I've probably learned more from comedians in my life than I had from any kind of guru. That's an exciting relationship to me. Heimir keeps a foul tongue, yet I keep him as a deep sworn friend.
This ritual that he does as a priest to this Loki figure is secret. It's something sacred. It's something that's only reserved for the king and his son. The young prince, he makes a vow. So it's a classic shift of power from one generation to another.
This is the last tear you will shed in weakness. It will be given back when most you need it.
His preparation is understanding the nature of reality.
Father and son have this initiation ceremony with henbane, which is not said that it's henbane, but nerds enjoy.
You will discover a lot about his life through the visions there, and they're wild, and just watch them because they're amazing.
Robert kind of told me what he needed, and I think he tapped into certain things he'd seen as far as my energy and my sense of humor and my love to do physical things.
Part of why I'm here is because of Willem Dafoe. Has a lot of fun and doesn't take himself really seriously. And you get a sense that Heimir is my spiritual counselor, and that's easy for me to do because I love Willem so much.
Proof You are not a dog.
And the great thing about whatever kind of spiritual trance a person might want to get into is it changes your viewpoint on what we might call God's sense of time, that there's different relationships to reality.
I feel like every time you learn something, it kind of expands your imagination or how you imagine a world could be, and it helps you not limit what you think is possible.
That initiation ritual is a step in that direction.
Also, we get to basically do acid together, which, is something I've never done on screen. It's very exciting to drink peyote with Willem Dafoe and get naked and howl like a wolf.
There aren't a lot of cuts in the movie. Most scenes are single camera, one shot. But when it's a big fight scene, it's a nightmare.
Landaroos, that was fun. Well, it was very muddy and not very pleasant physically, but it was a lot of fun to devise that sequence.
I'm sure just watching it, if you imagine like the energy that goes into shooting like one long shot of that, to get that right is very difficult.
Doing these long oneers where everybody is a piece of the moment. I mean, when you're doing a battle scene with all these extras and horses, everyone needs to be perfect because we're single camera on this long take. Everybody's choices, everybody's mistakes are at stake.
If I'm gonna punch you, you have to put the camera in a certain position so it looks like you sell the punch. But when you do that with a camera running alongside you as 20 characters also move around, it's gonna be difficult to make it identical each time.
In the actual raid, you are caught up in the coolness of Alex and his skills. It's scary, but you're also kind of like, rad. But you're kind of meant to feel guilty for thinking it was cool.
We pushed things around here and there until we were able to get the choreography just right.
We were climbing across roofs, leaping down off roofs. We were climbing up over the walls. It's wet, it's slippery. The art department cut some steps into it so we can get our hands in it so it looks like we hit the axe into it. Took us a little while just to work that one out to make it nice.
The Berserkers basically will have small arms. They will have C-axes, short axes, some medium axes. Close quarters, they want to be on top of you, biting and gouging.
I don't think it would be a Viking film if it wasn't, lots of stabbing and, gore and stuff like this. We normally sort of use blood bags, but on this job we had to make everything all inside the weapons themselves. You'd stab someone and it'd spurt blood out the end. The actors or whatever could have total freedom about where they ended up stabbing. It's great fun to bring out that.
The raid. We always assumed it was going to be depicted as 4 shots.
There's all these long takes. Jaron, my DP, and I, we would go and watch CC rehearse these scenes with his guys. Jaron would be with an iPhone trying to figure out the camera placement, constantly improving to make it more holistic.
We're just going to depict a single take, and that to me is the simpler solution than trying to shoot multi-camera, and that's just how my brain works. Probably 2 out of 3 shots are done on a crane because there's no other way to do it.
It feels different. There's a fluidity to it. Hopefully it feels that you're there and it feels more real. You can't cheat it, basically.
There were huge challenges into just building it.
There's a limit to how large the set can be. You need to maximize it.
We had to get everything just right.
And working with Cray to make sure the camera could get to A to B to C to D, cutting pieces out, putting them back, Frankensteining sets back together, whatever we had to do.
For instance, there was one building that we had built, was in place, and when we got there and Jaron was working on the camera move, we realized that it would be better if it was just sort of 3.5 feet further away. So we brought in a crane and picked it up and moved it 3.5 feet, and so we got the timing right.
Ridiculous ideas we had. It really was a lot of departments coming together, to pull this off. It would have been impossible without them.
Just the exponential size of everything was hard.
Shooting those big sequences were both physically and mentally draining because we had to do some of them close to 25 times because everyone is so invested. When you finally get it and you watch it and it's like all the moves are there, it's the greatest feeling ever.
which literally means ball game in Old Norse.
Basically a medieval rugby/lacrosse/gladiator fight.
Which is sort of a mix between Viking shinty or hurling, if you like.
But mostly beat the crap out of each other.
Ah, the damn Knattleikr Game.
We ended up in a location in the Mourne Mountains,
which was going to be very troublesome to get to. So I was faced with building a 3-mile road to get us into our location. And I think I threw absolutely everything at that location. Cast helicopters, equipment helicopters. That was probably the most challenging, and the most times you thought, oh God, what have I done? Why?
Difficult, up in the mountains, in the rain, in the mud.
The weather was maybe not the friendliest of us on that day, but again, it played to the scene. It helped add more drama.
And it worked brilliantly.
I created a little tent village and, of course, the game itself.
I thoroughly enjoyed putting that together because we were playing a sport. That was quite tricky, actually, but good fun.
I hate sports. Jaren was really resistant. And I finally had to say, look, like, I know we got beat up by jocks in high school, but we need to grow up and make a sports team.
One of our actors actually used to play a lot, and he was actually better than all of us a bit. He showed us how to use the backhand hits and strikes, and he was rotating and spinning around people, and he was very, very good. Unfortunately, we had to smash him in the head at the end of it. But, you know.
But the thing about the game in the story is Amleth saves my youngest son.
Amleth saves his half-brother, Gunnar.
There are a lot of feelings and mixed feelings for Amleth in that moment. It's fraternal instinct to his brother. To feel that is quite nice, I think, in a way. He hasn't had that close relationship with anyone. And it's the first time he does something unselfish. And in this moment, suddenly everyone's looking at him because he's the hero. He saved the day.
He's shown his masters that he's loyal.
You showed yourself brave. Certain privileges will be granted you.
This is an important way to get Amleth closer to his goal.
Getting closer to the family to do the deed.